Sometimes people will say, oh, our NHS is at risk from the flood of immigrants that would come to this country through the EU. Let's be clear, our NHS would not exist if it was not for immigration at all levels. It would not exist, we wouldn't have enough doctors at the top, we wouldn't have enough people running essential services. You are more likely to be treated by someone who's come to this country in casualty than you are to be sitting next to an immigrant. We should also remember the main costs of our NHS are to people who are very sick and at the end of life. Most immigrants come because they're economically active, they will come to work, they are healthy, and they will contribute far more in taxes to pay for the NHS than they take out of it. And then also remember, there are about 2.3 million people from this country who live in the EU on a permanent basis who benefit from healthcare. How would that be paid for in future? And finally, all of us, when we go on holiday, if we fall ill, getting healthcare, or at least getting healthcare without having to pay huge amounts of money for it, will be vastly more complicated and more difficult if we leave. We get far more from the EU to support the NHS than it costs us. I've yet to meet any serious scientist or medical scientist in this country who's in favour of us leaving. We know very well that we get far more out of Europe than we put into it. We do much better in getting research grants. 20% of the research funding to our universities now comes from Europe. We're over 2,000 medical research grants being held in this country. So we do well out of it, and of course we give a lot back. We also get involved in many collaborations. Now, something like 60% of all science is not just done by a little guy in the lab all on their own. It's done by big groups of people that cross boundaries. That would be significantly impacted if we were not in the EU. Our ability to develop new drugs, to test new drugs, our ability to develop new treatments or find the causes of illness, all of these would be impeded, and our ability to protect ourselves against, for example, new infections or the risks of climate change, etc. I've yet to meet anyone who doesn't doubt that these would be impaired if we were to leave the EU.